welcome back to another episode of Colorado Politicking. I'm Pat Poblete, a legislative reporter with Colorado Politics, and we have a very special episode for you this week. Now, normally we're taking you through the ins and outs of the doings, if you will, of the Colorado political landscape. This time we're going to take a step back, kind of zoom out here, and we're going to talk about a project that we here at Colorado Politics, along with our colleagues at the Denver and Colorado Springs Gazette, are working on this summer. And in order to do that, let's bring in senior writer Joey Bunch. Now, Joey, we're talking about the River Towns project here, and really, this is your brainchild. And I know there's no shortage of good ideas bouncing around in that brain of yours, but how'd you come to this one?
Well, I came to Colorado 20 years ago to cover water for the Denver Post, and I got to thinking that makes me no different from anybody else who's come to Colorado, all the way back to the ancient ones who wandered across the Bering Straits and eventually into Colorado. People come for the water and they stayed for something else. And that story is told in towns all across the state. But it's a story that's told in a different way because every town has its own relationship with the water. There's people and water, towns and the river, not towns or the river. And those are usually the silos that these discussions happen in. Now we're going to talk about how people live with water because this state is built on groundwater. But, we're in serious peril in the direction that we're heading in because of population growth and climate change. There's more people and less snow and rain. So that's something that we've got to think about because it's going to change lives. We don't live the way people did when they first came to Colorado 100, 150 years ago when these towns were settled. And the people who come in a generation or two are going to live nothing like we live because of the changes in the water. So that's what our staff has done. We fanned out around the state and talked to the people who live in these towns about the past, present, and future of their specific relationship with water. Last weekend we had Alamosa up. I kicked this thing off on July 4th with my doings and comings and goings in Estes Park, which I really enjoyed. And this coming weekend, we've got Marianne Goodland writing about Pueblo, which I think our readers are really going to enjoy. And of course, Michael Carlick is working on Canyon City. And then after that, you'll be talking about Fort Collins. Pat, can you give us a little taste of that Poudre River water? What can we expect out of Fort Collins?
Yeah, Joey, and you really see a lot of the same things in Fort Collins that you see in a lot of these other rivers that we talked about, whether it be Estes Park, whether it be Alamosa, whether it be Pueblo. Just so much of the town centers around this. And one of the things that I keep hearing when I talk to people in town is it's impossible to kind of unlink, to decouple the river and the town. Like the firehouse is named after the river. The school district is named after the river. The library is named after the river. I think I had a generous estimate that put like 30% or so of the businesses in the town named after the river. And I mean, the river is used for all sorts of things. We're talking about recreation, whether it be some sort of tubing, whether it be kayaking, whether it be fly fishing. We also have industry there. There's a lot of big brewers. I think Odell's is there. There's a couple bigger breweries there as well. And that's something that I'm going to dive into. But I think the thing that really makes Fort Collins itself unique, and this is something that's going to factor heavily into my story, which will be coming in the beginning of August, I believe, is this kind of ongoing 20-some year battle about moving some of the water out of the Poudre into kind of these front range communities that are even more so starved of water. So you have these communities in Fort Collins that are really trying to figure out, what will life be like without the river? And we see that all across the board, but it's even more stark in Fort Collins because it could be happening a lot quicker. But
where did the name Cache la Poudre come from?
So it came from the French settlers that were in the area. I believe they were bear hunters, they were trappers or hunters of some sort, and they were stuck in an enormous snowstorm, and they had to bury their cache of gunpowder, which is where the Poudre comes from, and hence the name from there. But Joey, enough about the stories that are going to come. Let's give people a taste of what's already out there so they can see what's coming. And our colleague Seth was in Alamosa. We've talked about that one already. And the Gazette visual team is doing a really great job taking these words that we're writing and bringing them to life. So let's get a quick look at that.
Once people experience that intimate relationship with water or a trail or a forest, it creates a sense of ownership to want to take care of it. My name is Patrick Ortiz. I'm the operations director for San Luis Valley Great Outdoors Action Team, which is a locally hired trail crew that we build trails in communities, but also help the Forest Service and BLM with trail maintenance and kind of some of their deferred maintenance recreation projects throughout the season as well. How I describe Alamosa as kind of the mixed melting pot of kind of all things San Luis Valley in a lot of ways.
From the bike trail there that we saw, let's go on to the campaign trail and bring in political correspondent Ernest Luning. Ernest, what do you have for us this week?
Well, this week it's campaign finance season here in Colorado. Later tonight at midnight, statewide candidates and congressional candidates have to file their campaign finance reports for the third quarter, which ended June 30th. And we don't have too many so far. 3 Colorado Democrats, though, none of whom have a strong Republican opponent yet, have all posted their second quarter fundraising totals. 2 of them have set new records for their for the totals raised for their races in an off-year quarter. That's Attorney General Phil Weiser, who's running for a second term. He raised $528,000 in the second quarter, and that's a considerable sum for an attorney general candidate here in Colorado. He's going to wind up with 1.5 million cash on hand at the end of the period. He has yet to draw an opponent, and that's a good question if the Republicans are going to be fielding anyone against him other than someone else who might just want to run for something like that. There's no strong opponent has emerged yet. Secretary of State Jenna Griswold. Now that's usually been a pretty quiet race. Rare that very much money is spent in that at all. And she's raised $340,000 for the quarter. She's wound up with $825,000 cash on hand at the end of the quarter. And she has a Republican who's going to be getting in probably later this month, but she's definitely going to have a big head start on a race that's going to get a lot of attention because of all the focus on election integrity this year. And the last is Senator Michael Bennet, who just filed his paperwork. Michael Bennet is running for a third term, and he'll be the first senator from Colorado to run for a third term since the mid-1960s. So, well, we'll see what happens. That's not considered a competitive race at this point so far. And here's one reason why, is Michael Bennet posted $1.7 million for the 3-month period that just ended. And he's got, what is he got? 2.3 million cash on hand at the end of the quarter. And that's a good head start. That's a little short of what Cory Gardner had at the same point last time, but Cory was facing one of the most competitive races in the country. And again, so far, Michael Bennet has yet to draw a prominent Republican challenger, a little less than a year before the primary. So, we'll have more totals at midnight tonight, and we'll let you know what those are on coloradopolitics.com.
Absolutely. And you can check in on Ernest Stellar reporting from the trail at Colorado Politics. And if you're interested in those Rivertown projects, we actually have compiled them all in a one easy link that's for you just behind us in the comments. So you can click on that link and see Alamosa. You can see Estes Park, and you can see Pueblo and Fort Collins when they eventually get there, all at that link below. And so thank you very much for taking the time to join us this week. We look forward to seeing you again next week.